Hello. So, I am very sorry to be filming this horrible, whatever, video quality. I did not post a podcast today. I guess I'm taking more time to make them into a better experience instead of just a picture. I'm really trying to work on creating much more of a video experience. So, I think I'm going to be taking slightly more time to make sure that it's an enjoyable one as opposed to just an image that you listen to like every other podcast. I do want it to be much more like a video essay and hopefully to include some animated content. But, since I did not post a podcast today, I figured I'd just share my thoughts today, right now, the world, Zelensky meeting with Trump. Insanity. The whole world's insane to me. And I'm extremely grateful for the context I've been deriving from listening to different people like Ralph Nader and Noam Chomsky. Although I find if you listen to Noam Chomsky long enough, you can listen to him for hours and hours and hours. Maybe eventually you might find someone asks Noam Chomsky, "What should we do?" And his response is very lackluster, I find. So, personally, I love Noam Chomsky. The man's 96 years old and he's still doing interviews and podcasts and ringing the alarm bells about what the hell is going on in this world, but he does not make a point of saying what we can do about it. So I do find that a little disturbing because you download all this information, all the regime changes that the US has led, all the assassinations that have been, funded by the government, all the destruction, unnecessary conflicts that have been provoked by this leader. Every American president, you know, since I think the 70s has been some form of war criminal. You look at Bill Clinton and the expansion of NATO eastward towards Russia, right? No one likes to remember the history. He is wonderful for reminding you that there is a history. Suddenly everyone's interested in what is happening in Israel and Palestine. No one was that interested when he was talking about it for the last 40 years about the state of life in Palestine under Israeli occupation, and now suddenly the world begins at October 7th for many people. Right, he'll tell you about the reality of the world. He'll tell you the reality and the historical context of many situations, but I find, what do you do about it? And he has been asked, and he says, well, you know what to do, basically. And he says, make it uncomfortable for these people that are, putting us in such danger. Make it expensive, sit in, join unions. And it's like these vague recommendations that I do find is inadequate. I do find it inadequate, but someone and it's a shame, I guess, to speak so negatively on Noam Chomsky. I actually find him extremely enlightening for understanding the situation we are actually in on this planet. But I do find I find listening to Jeffrey Sachs amazing. I love this dude. Fucking. And he's going around speaking similarly, sharing a context for the situations that are happening around the world. And he makes a point of bringing up constantly. And I don't know why. This is maybe just because of what I find. I guess I don't see other media. I don't see Indian media. I don't see Chinese media. I don't see European media. I see Canadian media. I see American media. And you will find lots of warmongering with China that he makes a point of bringing up, that there is this idea that there's going to be a war in 2027. This is insane. Your mind is being framed to anticipate a conflict that does not exist. Do you understand how insane that is? It's like I don't know. I don't know what to compare that to. It's just is disastrous. This is a tyrannical mentality. You are telling your people there will likely be a war because of why? Because China's economic growth. It's like, what is going on? It's like, I don't know. And you look historically, not to say that the communist China is an amazing government an amazing place to be. But ultimately, you look at the government in China, they are not going across oceans to invade countries. They're not bombing the shit out of random countries constantly. I think they invaded Vietnam for a period of time. Um, I don't know how many countries China's invading. And then on the other hand, you look at America and it's like, regardless of who is in power, regardless of if it's Democratic or Republican, their foreign policy seems to consistently be war, which is incredible. This is incredible to me. And it's instigating conflicts. And it's right. So let's control like China's trade routes to restrict them because they're a potential threat. You are an actual threat. You are a persistent and actual threat. And when a nation responds reasonably to your actual threat, this is now an instigation for war. And it's similarly, it's like this whole pushing NATO east, when that was a clear agreement between NATO and Russia, but I guess between America and Russia, to be more frank, that was not upheld. That was not upheld. And you look at the history of NATO expansion eastward. This is obviously a threat. This is and it's like to speak as though Putin, Russia, is interested in conquering the entirety of Europe, like similar to Hitler's intention to expand. I don't think this is the case, and I think most reasonable people don't actually believe that. And when you look at the position that Russia is in, its ability to even wage war, I don't think it even has the fucking capacity to even imagine this reality. And I think to assume that this is the case with Russia is ridiculous. I don't think that's not a reasonable take. I don't think that's a reasonable take. Much more realistically, like Jeffrey Sachs mentions, is that right as NATO continues to push eastward, 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 opening the door now for Ukraine, Russia's probably closest ally, quote unquote. I won't say ally, but it's a country that has many ties with Russia. There's pipelines running through Ukraine to access the European market. It's like there's many connections between Russia and Ukraine. If this now suddenly became a NATO state, it doesn't mean, oh, we're just joining up to defend ourselves against potential threats. No, that means you can put military weapons, you can put military systems in this country that will likely be pointed at Russia. That's why NATO existed in the first place, although that did not stop them from, having interventions in fucking Libya for some reason. But NATO was put in place to defend European countries against Russia. And it's like, right, so these are going to be military systems, missile systems, most likely, that now are going to be pointed at Russia. It's like, that's obviously threatening. And you look at the Cuban Missile Crisis, when Russia was becoming buddy-buddy with Cuba, and, threatening to put nuclear weapons in Cuba. Obviously, this is insanely existentially threatening to America, and that was crushed, but not without the risk of starting World War III. It's like not without that risk being there. That was very narrowly avoided. So it's incredible. It's incredible to have such amnesia, to not use history to our advantage. And I swear, like, when I listen to Jeffrey Sachs, it is so relieving. And he is not related to the Goldman Sachs team, whatever. That's Marcus Goldman and Samuel Sachs. Those are the two people that founded Goldman Sachs. He is not related to Samuel Sachs. They're different. Completely, please do not make this connection. Jeffrey Sachs, wonderful economist, great professor, also works for the UN, and he travels around the world trying to understand, how do we do something that is sustainable? How do we make a plan to share the earth with everyone where it works, where we are not creating conflicts for no reason, where we are not destroying our ability to survive on the planet, where we are not sitting here. He makes the point of saying, the greenhouse effect of carbon dioxide This was known. This was calculated on a piece of paper, 150 years ago, that there is a greenhouse effect because carbon dioxide, or yeah, it absorbs infrared light, and that would be energy that would be reflected down into the earth 150 years ago. This is determined, and then you have companies like ExxonMobil saying how wonderful it's going to be to mine the shit out of the Arctic without, mentioning climate change, without mentioning the environment. And as an economist, he has the understanding, it's like, right, the world has been growing consistently for, what the fuck is it? The world has been growing economically consistently ever since the fucking steam engine, and it's like, or at least in the last, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact detail, but it's by 4 to 5% per year for the last many decades. And I don't remember the point that he starts at, but it since World War II, at least, that the world has been growing. And even since during the 2008 global market crash, the world was still consistently growing in GNP. I don't know what that actually stands for, but it's similar to GDP, but for the world, by 4 to 5%. So it's like, we don't have an economic problem necessarily. We don't have a problem with producing things and making things. We have a problem with producing things to the scale that we are producing them without anticipating their effects. And he makes a point of talking about CFCs in refrigerant, and everyone thought, oh wow, this is an amazing new way to use refrigerant. Lo and behold, we did not know the side effects of it releasing into the atmosphere and then dispersing in a way that dissolved ozone. And magically, the Montreal Accord, or I forget exactly what it was, where they got together and decided, hey, we should stop doing that. And then they stopped doing that globally, worldwide. Somehow this managed to be done. So it's like, he makes a recommendation not to be fatally cynical. He thinks the biggest problem we have on this planet is not a matter of resources. There's not a resource problem. There's not necessarily a population problem. When you see developed countries, they're actually trending towards a problem of underpopulation, because they're not, people are in financial positions to not even be able to have enough kids to replace themselves. So many countries like South Korea as is an extreme example, and Japan, it's like, you're going to be seeing massive older populations that need so much care, and you're not going to be seeing enough people to produce, to care for them. So I think fuck, I lost my train of goddamn thought, motherfucker, shit. But don't say that. Goldman Sachs, Jeffrey Sachs, he I don't know, his general position to me is incredible. And it's like, it's incredible because it's so common sense. It's his concern is our ability to develop, not just infinitely economically on a finite planet, but how do we develop sustainably? How do we invest in things that will produce a future where human beings will be able to continue to exist reasonably on this planet? And it's and he is not this overwhelming thing. It requires research, it requires understanding the truth, but most importantly, the thing that he actually felt like was the biggest concern and the biggest problem was combating just incorrectness, combating this fatal cynicism, combating this disinterest in the world because it is already decided for us, we can't do anything about it, we're fucked, and accepting that as our fate. That is not the case. Every single aspect of human life on this planet has somehow evolved. Like, the way we even communicate completely evolved. We're bombarded by so much information, we don't even know what to fucking do with it. Yet, we have to sit here and act like, so we can't, we have to be tyrannical. We have to preserve American hegemony, however the fuck you say that word. We have to preserve our power, because if we don't, then Russia will. Obviously, we see how well Russia can, extend its influence around the world, barely. Or China will, which is much more threatening, because it's like, they have a thriving economy. They're the manufacturers of the world. And it's like, right, we must tyrannically, hold our power over them and not allow them to even grow. This is an unreasonable path forward. It's like, this is so unreasonable to me. So I love hearing Jeffrey Sachs speak about this. So look him up. I think he wrote a book recently called The Age of Sustainable Development. I don't know if that's the exact title, but it's in the title what his intentions are and why he speaks. And he imagines a world where we can persistently exist on this earth. And I believe the tyrants, I believe the Donald Trumps, I believe even Putin, I believe, all of these people, so-called dictators that are acting on the behalf of their ideals of whatever their country is, American ideals, it's like, that are to the detriment of actual national security, to the detriment of everyone everywhere else on earth. They are a dying breed. This is not the future. That is the past. That is when we had kings. We know. No, this is not the future. We can imagine a different future for ourselves, and it requires the truth. It requires understanding our historical context. It requires staying in the correct direction. And it requires a lot of honesty internally for us to, question the beliefs that we have been inundated with since birth. All of these ideas about whatever we're supposed to be participating in, all these ideas about being better than someone over there, being disconnected from everyone else, everywhere else in the world, the idea that the climate change is a hoax, that we human beings affecting the environment is a fraudulent idea. It's like, scientists are not your enemy. The truth is not your enemy. And it's like, ideas that are not based in reality are. So it's like, it really does require a questioning of our reality. And I think to Jeffrey Sachs, he was very concerned. He is very concerned that, like, our attention spans is the most determining factor in how this world is going to be shaped. And if only we can direct ourselves correctly, but we are constantly being misdirected to believe this and this and this and this and this. It is to our detriment that we do not understand the world, that we do not understand the situation we are in honestly, and we are not honest with ourselves about it. So it's like, I love Jeffrey, and it's like, if you're interested in a perspective of the world that is not just hopeful, but it is an expectation on human beings to be better, to do better things, to participate in fixing the world. And not as if the earth is the thing that needs to be fixing, but to fix the human relationship with the planet and each other. It's like, please listen to that person. And also continue listening to the podcast. Whatever. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to make cool shit. I swear to God, it's going to get better. I'm sorry. It's not better now. I'm not perfect. But I am trying. Thank you.